So, contemporary cities need a full
Embracing your
redesign.
today and
They
enhancing
do not
your
get
tomorrow.
the same recognition as their male counterparts. Stunt women.
Unsung heroes. They're all around us. You may not know it, but they might be sitting next to you on a train. Or you may even have one in the family. Now, my name is ZUZI Ford, and I first got interested in unsung heroes when I was researching Marcel Marceau, who, as you may or may not know, was a well-known mime artist. Now, not many people knew that Marcel Marceau was, in fact, an amazing person and a true hero. This was during World War II when he was just a teenager, and he joined the French resistance. As a resistance fighter, he saved literally hundreds of young children, Jewish children, by smuggling them across the border. Now, nobody knew that. In fact, he claimed that he hasn't spoken about this very often, in fact, in his life. It was something of a tragedy for him because he missed his father's death. But he claimed that his experience as a fighter, as a resistance fighter, in fact, created his mime persona, because when he was smuggling children, he had to entertain them, to keep them quiet so that they would not be found out. And of course, he himself had to be quiet. And how did he do that? By miming his stories. Now, that was one unsung hero that, he was a well-known person, but nobody really knew the real Marcel Marceau, the hero. Now, this prompted me to investigate my own family, to see if I had a hero in my background. And lo and behold, I did. In fact, it was my grandfather and my grandmother. They were, in fact, both heroes. Now, picture this. This is World War II yet again. A young married couple, one Jewish, my grandmother, and one Christian, my grandfather. Now, the Germans obviously did not approve of mixed marriages, and so they tried to put a pressure on my grandfather to divorce my grandmother. Now, he refused. He said, for better or worse, we are in this together. Now, as a result of this, my grandmother was not sent to an extermination camp. But unfortunately, as a result of my grandfather's stand, he was sent to a labor camp in Germany, while my grandmother ended up sent to a concentration camp. Not an extermination camp. She was protected by my grandfather, but yes, she was sent to a concentration camp. Now picture this, a young, very spoiled housewife who used to have a maid, now finds herself in a concentration camp where she is treated as nobody. Worse than that, she's treated as an animal. Now, she could have given up. She could have just said, oh, that's it. Nothing I can do. But she didn't. What she did do is she volunteered. She volunteered to be a nurse in a typhoid ward, which in a way was almost a death sentence, because typhoid, as you know, is highly contagious. But she told me, when I was talking to her, that she realized that she could do some good. She could be a comfort, because she could help somebody while they were passing. She could be there as the family that they missed, or the loved ones, the friends they missed. She could be there to help them, and she did. Now, while she was in the concentration camp, my grandfather was in a labor camp in Germany, which is in another country, because we're originally from the Czech Republic. What happened? He managed to escape during an air raid. This was towards the end of the war. The Americans were bombing Germany quite a lot, and he managed to escape. He swam in a river. So he was hiding in the banks of the river. He managed to walk from Germany during the night, walk from Germany all the way to the Czech Republic, all the way to Terezin, which was the concentration camp where my grandmother was. And there he discovered where my grandmother was. Now, this is in fact a city. The concentration camp was the whole city. And so my grandfather waited. He waited because the male prisoners used to go outside and work in the mines. And of course, end of the war, the Jewish people were struggling. They were starved and dying. They were falling like flies. And so what my grandfather did, he I can't imagine this, but he found a dead body. He dressed himself in the garb of a concentration camp prisoner. And at the end of the working day, he went back inside as a prisoner himself. So from one camp he managed to escape, he went to another. And in that camp, he located my grandmother. And he managed to smuggle her out. He managed to escape with her. They had to all time it. They had to make sure the guards were looking the other way. They had to climb the walls. But they did manage to escape. Now, that doesn't end there. The story doesn't end there. They decided to find their way home to Prague, which is the capital city. Now, again, they walked during the nights and hid during the day. And then at one point, they were captured by the Germans. They were actually captured along with a whole lot of other people. They were lined up against the walls. And they were about to be shot. Now, my grandfather decided that, well, there was nothing to lose. And so he took, I guess, his life and the lives of others into his hands. And he spoke to the officer, who at that time was a 16-year-old boy. Germany was almost at the end of, their resources. So young boys were officers in the army. And he spoke to him in German and managed to persuade him to let them all live. He managed to persuade this boy to allow them to move on. Now, eventually they found their way home, and eventually they found their children who were in hiding. And yes, the story does have a happy ending for them. They lived another 50 years together, happily married. They had never argued. And I can tell you, when I learned all this, I saw my grandfather as a completely different person, although to me he was always a hero.